The sun streamed through the large windows of the downtown cafe as Evan sipped his coffee, staring blankly at the screen of his laptop. It had become his weekend ritual: a quiet corner table, a steaming Americano, and a few hours spent catching up on work. He loved the routine, the predictability. But that Saturday, something broke the monotony. A group of women sat at the table behind him, their voices carrying above the low hum of conversations and the hiss of the espresso machine. Evan wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but a familiar name caught his attention. "Rachel and that guy, Darren," one of them said, stifling a laugh. Evan froze. Rachel was his wife. Darren? The name meant nothing to him, but the way the woman said it, with a tone that dripped with scandal, made his stomach churn. "Seriously," another voice chimed in. "They were all over each other at the company party. I don't know how her husband hasn't caught on." Evan's heart pounded. He leaned slightly closer, his coffee forgotten. "Well, he probably trusts her," the first voice replied, snickering. "Poor guy." They moved on to another topic, but Evan couldn't unhear their words. His mind raced as he tried to piece together what he'd just learned. Rachel worked in marketing, and while she occasionally mentioned work events, she'd never said anything about Darren. Was it just gossip? A misunderstanding? Or was there something more? Evan left the cafe in a daze, his coffee untouched. The world around him blurred as he replayed the conversation in his mind. Rachel had been his partner for 5 years. They had built a life together, shared dreams, and weathered challenges. The thought of her betraying him felt impossible. That evening, as Rachel breezed through the front door with her usual cheerful demeanor, Evan forced himself to act normal. She kissed him on the cheek and asked about his day, her voice as bright as ever. "Same old," Evan replied, watching her closely. "How was work?" Rachel hesitated for a split second, just long enough for Evan to notice. "Good. Busy as usual. Anything interesting happen?" he pressed. She shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "Not really. Just the usual meetings and deadlines." Evan nodded, his suspicion growing. Over the next few days, Evan began to pay closer attention to Rachel's behavior. He noticed little things he had once ignored: how she kept her phone face down, how she took longer to respond to his texts, how she suddenly started staying late at the office. It wasn't until he found her work badge on the kitchen counter one morning that he decided to dig deeper. Picking it up, he noticed a folded piece of paper tucked under it. His heart sank when he read the note. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait for next time. D." Evan clenched the paper in his hand, his mind reeling. The evidence was clear, but he needed more before confronting her. That night, while Rachel showered, Evan accessed her phone. His hands trembled as he scrolled through her messages, stopping when he found a thread with "Darren." The text confirmed everything: flirty exchanges, plans to meet up, and explicit messages that made his stomach turn. He put the phone back where he found it, his heart pounding with a mix of rage and heartbreak. Rachel emerged from the bathroom, a towel wrapped around her, smiling as if nothing were wrong. "You okay?" she asked, noticing his tense expression. "Yeah," Evan lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." But inside, a storm was brewing. Evan lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling as Rachel slept soundly beside him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the messages from Darren, the evidence of her betrayal. The words replayed in his mind, stoking the flames of his anger. By morning, he had made a decision. He wasn't going to act impulsively. If he confronted Rachel now, she would deny it or spin a web of excuses. No, he needed to be deliberate. He needed undeniable proof to expose her lies. Evan began his quiet investigation. The next day, While Rachel was at work, he called her company under the guise of delivering a forgotten item. "This is Evan, Rachel's husband," he said smoothly. "I'm dropping something off for her. Is she in her office today?" The receptionist hesitated. "Oh no, she's working remotely today. She's not in the building." Evan's stomach tightened. Rachel had left that morning in her usual work attire, her bag slung over her shoulder. She hadn't mentioned anything about working remotely. That evening, Evan casually asked about her day. "How was it working from home?" he inquired, keeping his tone neutral. Rachel froze for a split second before recovering. "Oh, it was good. Quiet, but productive." Evan nodded, masking his anger. "She's still lying." Over the next few days, Evan took more deliberate steps to uncover the full extent of her affair. He installed a tracking app on her phone, something he had never imagined he would do in their relationship. He hated the feeling of invading her privacy, but she had already shattered the trust between them. The app revealed patterns that confirmed his worst fears. Rachel wasn't staying late at the office or working remotely. She was spending her time at Darren's apartment or meeting him at hotels. Evan also reached out to Darren's social media connections, carefully observing their interactions. It didn't take long to find mutual friends who had tagged Darren and Rachel in photos from company events. One particular image made his blood boil. Rachel and Darren at a holiday party, standing too close, her hand lingering on his arm. The comments underneath were filled with teasing remarks from coworkers. "Looks like someone's got a work spouse," one comment read. "The power couple of marketing," another said, followed by winking emojis. Evan saved every bit of evidence. The breaking point came when Rachel told him she had a last-minute business dinner with a client. Her tone was casual, almost bored, as she slipped on a black dress that hugged her figure. "You're working late again?" Evan asked, feigning indifference. "It can't be helped," she replied, checking her reflection in the mirror. "This client is important, and I have to be there to seal the deal." Evan smiled faintly. "Of course. Don't let me keep you." As soon as Rachel left, Evan tracked her location using the app. She wasn't at a restaurant or a client meeting. She was at Darren's apartment. Evan clenched his jaw as he stared at the blinking dot on the screen. The proof was undeniable now. He spent the rest of the evening preparing for what came next. He contacted a lawyer to begin drafting divorce papers and asked Ava, Rachel's coworker, and someone he trusted, for help delivering the final blow. The next morning, Evan called Rachel's boss and confirmed her schedule. She would be at the office all afternoon for a team presentation. It was the perfect setting for his plan. Evan packed everything he had gathered, screenshots of text messages, photos, and a timeline of her deceit. He included a note to accompany the papers. "You thought you could betray me and walk away unscathed. Now, everyone will know the truth. Evan." That afternoon, as Rachel prepared for her presentation, Evan walked into her office with a manila envelope in hand. Her coworkers greeted him warmly, unaware of the storm he was about to unleash. "Hey, Evan," one of them said. "Surprise visit for Rachel?" "You could say that," Evan replied, his voice calm but cold. He found Rachel in the conference room, chatting with Darren and a few other team members. When she saw him, her smile faltered. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice tinged with nervousness. Evan walked up to her, handing her the envelope. "Just tying up loose ends." Rachel opened the envelope, her face draining of color as she realized what it contained. Rachel's hands trembled as she opened the manila envelope. At first, her expression was one of confusion as she pulled out the divorce papers. Then her face crumpled when she saw the neatly organized stack of evidence, screenshots of her text messages with Darren, photos from her supposed client dinners, and even a detailed timeline of her lies. The room fell silent as everyone noticed the shift in Rachel's demeanor. "What's going on?" Darren asked, his voice tinged with concern. Rachel didn't answer. Her face had turned pale, her eyes wide with panic as she flipped through the papers. "What's the first step after discovering infidelity? Write in the comments." Evan crossed his arms, his voice loud enough for the room to hear. "You want to tell them, Rachel? Or should I? What is this?" Rachel stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's the truth," Evan said coldly. "Something you've been avoiding for months." Darren's face darkened as he glanced at the papers in Rachel's hands. "Wait, is this about us?" he asked, his voice dropping. Evan laughed bitterly. "Oh, it's about you, Darren. And Rachel. And every lie she's told to keep this affair hidden." The murmurs in the room grew louder as Rachel's coworkers exchanged shocked glances. "Evan, please," Rachel begged, her voice breaking. "Can we talk about this somewhere private?" "No," Evan snapped, his anger boiling over. "You don't get to sweep this under the rug. Not after everything you've done. I trusted you, Rachel. I built a life with you. And you threw it all away for this." He gestured toward Darren, whose face was now a deep shade of red. Rachel's boss, Mr. Grayson, stepped into the room, his expression stern. "What's going on here?" he demanded. Evan turned to him, his voice steady. "I'm sorry to disrupt your day, Mr. Grayson, but I thought you should know what kind of person you have on your team." He handed Mr. Grayson a copy of the evidence. The older man skimmed through it, his frown deepening with every page. "Rachel," Mr. Grayson said, his tone icy, "is this true?" Rachel's voice cracked as she tried to respond. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It was a mistake." Evan scoffed. "A mistake? Cheating is a choice, Rachel. Lying to me, sneaking around, betraying everything we built together, that wasn't an accident." Mr. Grayson turned to Darren. "And you, Darren? Care to explain why you thought it was appropriate to carry on an affair with a colleague while representing this company?" Darren opened his mouth to speak but closed it again, his jaw tightening. The room erupted into whispers as Rachel buried her face in her hands. Evan took a step back, letting the weight of the moment sink in. "I'm done here," he said, his voice firm. "Rachel, consider this my goodbye. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." As he turned to leave, Rachel lunged forward, grabbing his arm. "Evan, wait! Please don't do this. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." Evan shook her off, his expression cold. "The time for fixing things is long gone, Rachel. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it." Evan walked out of the conference room, the sound of Rachel's muffled sobs following him down the hallway. He didn't look back. Outside the building, Ava was waiting by his car. "How'd it go?" she asked, her tone cautious. "Better than I expected," Evan replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "She's finally facing the consequences." "Good," Ava said. "She deserves it." Evan nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time in months, he felt free. Evan drove away from Rachel's office building, his chest heaving with a mix of anger and relief. The confrontation had been cathartic, but it also left a hollow ache in his chest. 5 years of love, trust, and dreams had unraveled in a single afternoon. He parked his car in front of his brother Marcus's house. Marcus had been his sounding board since the first suspicion of Rachel's infidelity crept in. "Looks like you've been through a storm," Marcus said as he opened the door. Evan chuckled bitterly. "Storm's an understatement. It's done. Everyone knows now, including her boss." Marcus nodded approvingly, stepping aside to let Evan in. "Good. She deserves every ounce of fallout. But what about you? How are you holding up? Evan sank onto the couch, rubbing his temples. I don't know. Part of me feels lighter, like I can finally breathe. But the other part, he trailed off, his voice thick with emotion. It'll take time, Marcus said, handing him a beer. You're grieving, man. Not just the relationship, but the future you thought you had with her. Evan nodded, taking a sip. It's not even about her anymore. It's about figuring out who I am without her. What I want next. You'll figure it out, Marcus said confidently. And you've got me, Ava, and the rest of the family to back you up. In the days that followed, Evan began the painstaking process of rebuilding his life. He moved out of the apartment he had shared with Rachel and into a small but cozy townhouse on the outskirts of town. With every box he unpacked, he felt a little more like himself. The furniture was no longer a compromise, the decorations no longer tinged with memories of Rachel. He also threw himself into work, taking on new projects and staying late at the office. His dedication didn't go unnoticed, and within weeks, his boss offered him a promotion. This will keep you busy, his boss joked, handing him the paperwork. That's exactly what I need, Evan replied, feeling a spark of excitement for the first time in months. Rachel, meanwhile, was drowning in the fallout of her actions. Darren had been fired from the company for violating workplace conduct policies, and Rachel was placed under intense scrutiny. Her reputation among her coworkers was in shambles, and her once bright future in marketing seemed uncertain at best. Evan heard through mutual acquaintances that Rachel had tried to reach out to some of his friends, pleading her case. But the damage was done. One evening, Evan received a call from Ava. Hey, how's the new place? She asked, her voice warm. It's good, Evan said, glancing around his living room. Feels like home already. I'm glad, Ava said. You deserve a fresh start. Thanks, Ava. For everything, Evan replied sincerely. I don't know how I would have gotten through this without you. You don't have to thank me, Ava said. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. That's what friends are for. After hanging up, Evan sat in the quiet of his new home, reflecting on how much had changed in such a short time. He had lost a fiancée but gained clarity, strength, and a renewed sense of purpose. The pain of Rachel's betrayal still lingered, but it no longer consumed him. He was beginning to see a future where her shadow didn't loom over him, a future that was entirely his own. Months passed, and the sharp sting of betrayal began to dull. Evan's days were no longer consumed by thoughts of Rachel and Darren, though the experience had left its mark. He had learned to live with the scar, using it as a reminder of the strength he never knew he had. His townhouse was fully furnished now, reflecting his style rather than the compromises he'd once made with Rachel. Shelves were filled with books he loved, photos of friends and family adorned the walls, and a guitar leaned in the corner, a hobby he'd rediscovered in the quiet evenings. Evan wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. One Saturday morning, he found himself at the local farmer's market, sipping coffee and browsing the stalls. The vibrant energy of the market reminded him of what he loved about his town, the sense of community, the simple pleasures. As he examined a display of fresh produce, a familiar voice called out to him. Evan? He turned to see Ava standing a few feet away, holding a bag of vegetables and wearing a bright smile. Ava, hey, he said, surprised but happy to see her. What brings you here? I come every weekend, she replied. It's kind of my thing. What about you? Figured I'd check it out, Evan said with a shrug. Needed to get out of the house. They walked through the market together, chatting easily. Ava told him about her recent trip to visit her sister, while Evan shared updates about his new position at work. You look good, Ava said as they stopped at a stall selling homemade candles. Happier. I feel good, Evan admitted. It's like I've finally left all the chaos behind. I'm glad to hear that, Ava said sincerely. You deserve it. They parted ways that afternoon, but something about their time together lingered in Evan's mind. The following week, Ava texted him. Ava, hey, want to grab coffee sometime? My treat. Evan smiled as he read the message. Evan, sounds great. When? They met at the same cafe where Evan had first overheard the gossip about Rachel and Darren. This time, the atmosphere felt lighter, freer. As they talked, Evan realized how much he enjoyed Ava's company. She was thoughtful, funny, and genuinely supportive, qualities he hadn't fully appreciated before. Over the next few months, their friendship deepened. They attended concerts, tried new restaurants, and even took a weekend road trip to the coast. Each moment felt effortless, natural, as though they had known each other forever. One evening, as they sat on Evan's balcony watching the sunset, Ava turned to him with a teasing smile. So, Mr. New Beginnings, she said, what's next for you? Evan thought for a moment, a genuine smile spreading across his face. Honestly, I'm just enjoying where I am right now. Ava nodded, her eyes sparkling in the fading light. That's a pretty good place to be. For the first time in what felt like forever, Evan wasn't worried about the past or the future. He had reclaimed his life, and though it had been a painful journey, he had come out stronger on the other side. As he sat beside Ava, the laughter and warmth of the moment surrounding them, he realized something profound. Life had a way of surprising you when you least expected it. And sometimes, those surprises were exactly what you needed.